How would you say your character has changed between these two seasons?
Oh my goodness, so much change. So much change that I felt like I was holding on to my seat because it was so hard to figure out. She in the first season, she even does like a hair change. So not I just was having everything ripped from me and that grounded me into Farron, which was very interesting because I also felt like the confusion I felt as Farron, she was also feeling. So, if nothing else, I was able to latch onto that. Obviously, she was a dancer, she was a ballerina. Last season, she even tried out choreographing. And this season, you find her and she is doing pull-ups. She is doing arm wrestling. So she's definitely finding herself in a new way. But I find it very interesting that I got to latch on to the part of her that was confused.
I love that. I love that. And similarly for you, Mallory, where would you say we meet your character at the top of this season versus where we will be left with her by the end?
Yeah, so we meet Kelly 6 months after the events of season one, and she has very much not dealt with the trauma of season one, losing her sister, losing her dad. She has just launched herself headfirst into this church that her mom has introduced her to. And it is offering a sense of peace and a sense of community that she's certainly in desperate need of. She's isolated herself from the girls. Um, but their intentions are not all what they seem. And I think the rest of the season is going to be her journey of discovering that, discovering her other community of the liars, and finding a bit more a bigger sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And for both of you, and I'll actually start with you, Zaria, how would you say that the horror theme from season one is still as prevalent in season two? And talk to me about how that affects your characters.
Of course. Yes, I would actually say we upped the ante on horror this season. We were not afraid of a kill. We were not afraid of some blood. We were not afraid of some physical pain. So I am really excited about that because I think what season two does is it took everything from season one and said, okay, let's highlight all the best parts and the worst parts of these young women. And you just get a wonderful, beautiful, nice, messy mess. I think in particular, Farron is constantly confronted by not only the horror of Bloody Rose and having a literal killer after her, but I think that there's a silent killer always for Farron. And I think her silent killer in season one was her battle with fitting into the ballet world. And then in season two, you find her and she's in these hyper masculine spaces and dealing with misogyny. And so yeah, I think she has to battle both 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 of those horrors very frequently.
Agreed. And how about you, Mallory?
I mean, what was the question?
About your character battling horrors, which I feel like
Horrors. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. I can relate to, Kelly is not on the inside with the Bloody Rose horrors per se.
Sure.
Um, but she's got some horrors at home, which are gonna slowly be revealed throughout the course of the season. She's dealing with her boyfriend trying to hold on to that relationship for dear life, even though it is very clearly not working, not healthy for either of them. And
The horrors of
and then
your family had to go through too.
yeah, there's a lot of trauma from season one, and the show is so clever in that you've got these real life horrors that are eventually going to give way to the actual horror, which is Bloody Rose, and Kelly will not be necessarily spared from that.
Dun, dun.
Dun dun dun.
I love the foreshadowing. And then just lastly for both of you, if you could summarize this season in a sentence or a phrase, what would you have to say?
Oh man.
tag team again.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's sexy.
It's sexy.
It's scary.
How would you say your character has changed between the two seasons?
Well, she's added some more trauma to her plate. Has a lot more healing to do, I think. I do think that there's a level of understanding with the trauma that has come with her mother. I think the first season she was holding on to any kind of theory that might have meant that her mom didn't just choose to, leave her. And I think that she's come to terms with the truth of that finally. But she has a lot to work through still, and I think is suffering a great deal of her own identity. She carried the weight of the trauma quite literally for 9 months, and she's now shed that weight and given the baby up for adoption, and
Which is itself another trauma.
right,
Yep.
yeah. And so, thank you.
Mhm.
I agree. And so I feel like there's a lot of self-discovery to be done for her, but she is trying her best to put one foot forward. But is she spiraling? Absolutely.
Yes, and for you, Annabeth, I am a huge fan of the OG show. That was like my end all
Me
be all
too.
when I was in high school.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit about what it has been like for you to reprise your role from the OG show. And did you ever think that you would have this opportunity to do so?
No, I did not. It was such a wonderful surprise and an honor really because I loved being in. It's pretty rare that you get to be in one iteration of a show and then time passes and life goes on and then there's a reboot. I guess that means I'm old, but
No. No, because the reboot was
Yeah.
done really fast.
Yes, this is
Not
true.
even.
But with the team, in both iterations, both camps have been, completely committed to their vision. They're different entities, but the same. The girls in both worlds have been phenomenal. And I think this version, this reboot, it's calibrated up. Everything is turned up. The it's just they've really leaned into the horror aspect and I don't know, it's just like amplified, and so it's been fun. Just a blast to join the show and therapize again.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of the OG series, Bailee, are there any callbacks to the original Pretty Little Liars that started it all that you can share that might happen in this season?
Yeah, I mean, apart from the obvious, which is like the golden ticket, we were able to start our second season with Dr. Sullivan, which is how the original started their second season, which is such just a beautiful, I think, full circle, full nod to what the original did. But there are callbacks for sure. There's character mentions. There's, the town of Rosewood.
Mhm.
I think we do our best to plant as many Easter eggs as we can to let the original fans know that we see them. And we're so lucky to be able to share the same name and be able to embark on our journey in our universe. But at the same time, we want people to feel fully immersed in our experience and on our characters and on our show. And so, yes, there's definitely some hidden gems in there. But I think at the same time, we're just really excited to be back for a second and to have our footing in our world.
Amazing, amazing. And then Annabeth, talk to me a little bit about why it's important to showcase like you therapizing these
Mm.
teenage girls in this way and like how you hope that like really resonates with those that are watching, like in
Oh.
the importance of mental health.
I do hope, and I think that one of the things that this show does so well is it normalizes seeking mental help, asking for help, talking about your issues, taking prescription medication if you need to, choosing not to take medication if you don't want to. It really empowers these young women to process their feeling. And I think, I'm a mother of two teenage sons, and I know full well how challenging it is. It's challenging to be a 50-year-old woman in this day and age. So to be a teenager with the onslaught of social media and all of the pressures, I think to really normalize mental health help, I just think it's of such a service. And yet it's not preachy or didactic or heavy-handed in this way. It's just available and it's a real reality. So I think and the fact that these girls do ask for help is amazing.
I love that. And then just lastly, for both of you all, starting with you, Bailee, if you could summarize this season of the show in a sentence or a phrase, what would
Oof.
you have to say?
Hold on to your panties.
Ooh, okay. I like that. I like
You weren't
that.
asking me, but I was letting her
No.
think.
Yeah, I like
That
that.
was so good. How do you beat that?
I would just say it's bigger and it's bolder. It's even more daring and honest and fun.
Where would you say we meet your character at the top of the season versus where we will be left with her by the end?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh my gosh, that's a really good question. I think Mouse's life is a bit in shambles. I don't want to speak for the other girls, but I feel like a lot of our lives are kind of in shambles. But she is steadfast in trying to uncover this mystery and could find more answers to explain the whys and the hows that everything is happening. And she's also blossoming into herself a lot, which is beautiful. We find her in her 16th birthday in the season, and I think that coming of age moment for her is really important. She's wearing cuter clothes and she's putting lipstick on, and she's doing all these things to feel more like a woman and feel like herself, and it's a really beautiful moment of exploration, but of course shit happens in the middle, and then at the end I think she's had to sacrifice quite a bit and make a lot of hard decisions, and similarly to the end of season one, she's kind of left in a place of knowing her strengths better, but also holding a burden of experiences that no 16-year-old or 15-year-old should go through.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. And similarly for you, Maia, how would you say your character has changed between the two seasons?
Oh my goodness, so much. I think for season one, during season one, Noah and all the girls, to be honest, were just desperate to survive. They were holding on for dear life in fight or flight mode. Special Noah was so incredibly impulsive out of the place of protecting both herself and the people that she loves that I think this season, even though they're still getting chased around by a murderer, there's more room for her to even ask the questions of who she is and what she wants in life. And that in itself means so much rediscovery, and it means rebuilding who she is and what she likes to do and who she likes and what she wants to do with life. I think there's so many questions that arise from even the slightest discomfort in who you are, and I think she's definitely trying to find herself amidst all of that and still dealing with so much trauma. But I think season two has made so much more room for her to find who she is, even if she is running away from Bloody Rose.
I definitely, absolutely. And then for you, Jordan, how would you say that the horror theme from season one is still as prevalent in season two? And how does that affect your character?
I think that the horror theme is actually amped up a little bit this season,
Mhm.
which is so cool to see. In season one, that's why I love that you gave me this question. I'm such a horror buff. It's like you knew. Um, in season one we have, A, who's like 6 foot something, like a Michael Myers mask face, like sort of looming thing that is terrifying. But there is something about, a female figure with the whole like religion aspect of the crown thorns, and from her like the way that she looks to her gait that is like so spooky and scary, that in my opinion is so amped up this season. And there's some more kills that jump off this season, just one by one they're dropping like flies. But for Ash, it is sort of, he's in on it now, which is nice,
Mm.
because in season one he was totally clueless as to what was going on, and he just thought maybe his girlfriend was like cuckoo. Um, and now that he's aware of like what's going on, he can better show up to be a better boyfriend in his relationship.
Is the horror theme in season one still as prevalent in season two?
Yes, and more so, we would say.
Yeah.
Lindsay and I are horror diehard fanatics. Like that's what we bonded over,
Mm.
now almost like 8 or 9 years ago. And we had horror in season 1, we were so thrilled when the fans of the show, that was one of the elements that people really responded to.
Mm-hmm.
So that gave us permission in season 2 to not only keep the horror element alive, but to push it and double down even further. So I would say if you like the slasher elements of season 1, season 2 has that, and more so starting with our like 6-minute gonzo premiere episode, which has as much killing in those 6 minutes as season 1 had in the entire season 1.
No, literally, when I was screening the episodes last night, I was like, whoa, okay. Waited for the daytime because
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much happening. I love that though. And for you, or Lindsay, did you want to add to that any?
Sure. No, I definitely push that horror. And, we considered season 2 to be kind of like part 2 in a franchise of horror movies. And, all of our favorite movies, those first movies really set the tone, introduce the villain, and then they sort of outdo themselves. So much like Friday the 13th Part 2 and Scream 2, and I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which I love and we love so much, we definitely wanted to push the horror, but also embrace summer horror tropes and embrace sequel tropes. So that's been really fun, and I think will be really fun for horror fans as they watch the season.
Absolutely, I definitely agree. And then for you, Sharon, how would you say Sydney and Tabby's relationship provides representation of a Black mother and daughter on screen?
Oh, wow. Well, I think just the fact that they're so close, I think it's a positive example of, two females together, mother and daughter. And I think also, Sydney is sort of the grounding sort of love place for Imogen and Tabitha. But I think it's also very universal because it's teenagers, it's that time, right? It's tricky, but I think you can feel that Tabby and Sydney have something really special and really strong.
Absolutely. And where would you, and staying with you, Sharon, where would you say we're going to meet your character at the top of the season versus where we're going to be left with her by the end?
Well, by the beginning of the second season, everyone's just kind of like on edge. It's a kind of high pressure. The girls are sort of experiencing just coming off of what happened in season 1. So Sydney, along with the other moms, are doing what they do best, which is just holding down the fort, mama bearing, and Sydney does that well.
I love that. I love that. And then lastly, for you, Roberto and Lindsay, I was obsessed with Pretty Little Liars, the OG season when I was in high school. So this is like super full circle for me to be like
Yay.
in these interviews. But I want to know, will season 2 have any callbacks to the OG series that you all are able to tease?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is that Annabeth Gish, who played the OG PLL's therapist, the leaguer therapist, Dr. Sullivan in the OG series, is with us this season. She's our generation of PLL's therapist, and one of the things that was really important to us and to all of us to do in season 2 is own the events of season 1 where these girls were traumatized by someone, a giant man in a mask, coming and chasing them. When we started talking about season 2, we didn't want to pretend that they were all okay and that wasn't traumatizing and that wasn't horrifying. So we thought, a really good way to dramatize that was to have them in group therapy, which we jokingly called the Final Girls Support Group. And it made so much sense to use a character from the original series. And we thought someone like Annabeth could be a great bridge from that and not be like, sometimes it's funny, sometimes when you bring other characters from the original series in, it's sort of a disconnect and it takes you out of it. And Annabeth was the exact opposite. It kind of made just, I think,
seamless,
perfect sense.
And yeah, she for sure is the biggest tie, and we've definitely sprinkled in some very fun Easter eggs. We haven't forgotten, and Dr. Sullivan hasn't forgotten that she also therapized 4 other little liars in Rosewood. So it should be fun for fans to pick up on those.